Have you ever felt like you've lost everything? Like the world has pulled the rug out from under you? Today I want to share a story about a man named Alex and how hitting rock bottom became the foundation for a life he never knew he wanted. Alex had what most people would call a perfect life. A corner office with a stunning city view, a beautiful home in the suburbs, a loving wife, and 2 amazing kids. He was the guy who had it all figured out. Or so it seemed. The world he had so carefully constructed was more fragile than he ever imagined. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday. It started with a sterile, impersonal email. Company-wide restructuring. Alex's position, the one he had dedicated 15 years of his life to, was eliminated. Effective immediately. He walked out of that gleaming office building in a daze, carrying his life in a small cardboard box. The city that had once seemed full of promise now felt cold and indifferent. When he arrived home, expecting to fall into the comfort of his family, he was met with a different kind of silence. A note was on the kitchen table. His wife, Maria, had left. The words blurred together, something about years of feeling unseen, of being a prop in his perfect life. She and the kids were gone, staying with her sister. The house, once filled with laughter and the chaos of family life, was suddenly just an empty, echoing space. That same day, a certified letter arrived. The bank. Due to a series of risky investments he had made, trying to get ahead even faster, the mortgage was in default. The house, his sanctuary, was being foreclosed. In the span of just 8 hours, Alex went from being a man who had everything to a man who had nothing. The shock was a physical blow, leaving him breathless. He just stood in the middle of his empty living room, the silence screaming louder than any noise he had ever heard. The life he knew was over. The next few weeks were a blur of shame and disbelief. Alex stayed with a friend for a while, but the pity in their eyes was too much to bear. He soon found himself with nowhere to go. The man who once chaired board meetings was now learning the harsh geography of the city's streets. He learned which park benches were safest, where to find a warm meal, and how to become invisible. The city he had once commanded from his high-rise office now looked completely different from the ground up. He saw the cracks in the pavement, the desperation in people's eyes, and the small, overlooked acts of kindness. He spent his days walking, trying to outrun the memories and the gnawing emptiness inside him. The nights were the worst. Cold, lonely, and filled with a despair so profound it felt like a physical weight on his chest. He was no longer Alex, the successful executive. He was just another faceless, homeless man, a ghost haunting the edges of a society he once belonged to. He remembered one particularly cold night, huddled in a doorway, rain soaking through his thin jacket. He hadn't eaten in 2 days and was shivering uncontrollably. He had hit a new low, a level of misery he didn't know existed. He thought about ending it all, just letting the cold take him. But then, something small happened. A woman walking by, probably on her way home from a late shift, stopped. She didn't say anything. She just opened her bag, took out a thermos, and poured him a cup of hot soup. She also handed him a pair of thick woolen socks. She smiled a tired, gentle smile and walked away before he could even thank her. That simple act of human connection was like a spark in the darkness. It was a reminder that even in the depths of his despair, kindness still existed. He started to notice more of these moments. The vendor at the food cart who gave him a hot dog at the end of the day. The librarian who let him stay and read long after he should have left. The little boy who gave him his half-eaten chocolate bar without a second thought. These weren't grand gestures. They were small, almost insignificant acts, but for Alex, they were lifelines. They were proof that he wasn't entirely invisible. These moments began to chip away at the armor of his bitterness and self-pity. He started talking to other people on the streets, hearing their stories. He met a former teacher, a veteran, a young artist. He realized that everyone had a story, everyone had faced their own battles. For the first time, He was truly seeing the people around him, not as statistics or problems to be solved, but as fellow human beings. He was learning a new kind of wealth, one not measured in bank accounts or possessions, but in shared humanity and compassion. The streets, which had been his prison, were slowly becoming his classroom. One day, sitting on a park bench, Alex found a crumpled newspaper someone had left behind. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just a distraction. His eyes landed on a small article about a little town called Harmony Creek. It was a place he'd never heard of, nestled in the mountains a few hundred miles away. The article described it as a quiet, simple community where people knew their neighbors and life moved at a slower pace. An idea, wild and terrifying, began to form in his mind. What if he just left? Left the city that held all his failures, all his ghosts. He had been clinging to the familiar misery of his situation. Staying on these streets was, in its own way, a comfort zone. He knew the rules here. He knew what to expect. Leaving was a step into the complete unknown. It was scarier than any business deal he had ever made. He counted the few crumpled bills and coins in his pocket. It was just enough for a one-way bus ticket to a town near Harmony Creek. This was it. A choice. He could stay here and let despair consume him, or he could take a leap of faith into the unknown. He looked at the towering skyscrapers that once represented his ambition and now only mocked his failure. He remembered the woman with the soup, the librarian's smile, the kindness of strangers. He chose courage. He walked to the bus station, his heart pounding with a mixture of terror and a strange, new feeling. Hope. Handing over his last few dollars for the ticket felt like the most significant transaction of his life. As the bus pulled out of the city, he didn't look back. He watched the concrete jungle fade into rolling hills and open skies. He was leaving behind the ghost of who he was, traveling toward a future he couldn't yet imagine. For the first time in months, Alex felt a flicker of something he thought he had lost forever, a sense of possibility. Arriving in Harmony Creek was like stepping into another world. There were no skyscrapers, no blaring sirens, just a main street lined with charming old buildings and the scent of pine in the air. People actually made eye contact. They smiled and said hello. It was disorienting at first. Alex, so used to being invisible, felt exposed. He found work doing odd jobs. Mowing lawns, helping at the local hardware store, washing dishes at the town diner. It was hard, physical labor, a world away from his old life of spreadsheets and meetings. But at the end of each day, he felt a clean, honest exhaustion. He wasn't earning a six-figure salary, but he was earning enough for a small room above the diner and 3 meals a day. Slowly, Alex began to put down roots. The diner owner, a kind woman named Sarah, started saving him a slice of apple pie at the end of his shift. The hardware store owner taught him about woodworking. He joined the town's volunteer crew to help repair the community hall. He wasn't a former executive here. He was just Alex, the guy who was good at fixing things and always had a ready smile. One evening, sitting on the porch of his small apartment, watching the sunset paint the mountains in hues of orange and purple, Alex felt a profound sense of peace. He didn't have a fancy car or a big house. His wardrobe consisted of a few pairs of jeans and work shirts, but he had a community. He had purpose. He had found a new kind of richness, a quiet joy in the simplicity of his new life. He realized that losing everything had been the only way to find what truly mattered. He had been so busy building an empire that he had forgotten to build a life. The fall wasn't the end of his story, it was the beginning. Alex had discovered that true wealth isn't about what you have, it's about who you are when you have nothing. And for the first time in his life, he was genuinely, deeply happy. Thank you so much for watching. If Alex's story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content about finding strength in adversity. Remember, sometimes the greatest comebacks start when you have nothing left to lose. See you in the next video.